joining me today, Neil. I appreciate it. So, the discussion we're going to have really centers largely on the survey that you have recently published and shared with all of us. And perhaps my first question to you is generally private companies are pretty jealous of the information that they have, that they gather. Why is Cascade so open and transparent about its business, considering that the survey focuses on your clients, essentially?
Yeah, transparency is very important to us. I think that our clients value it. That being said, our clients aren't named in the survey, and that's to protect their own confidentiality because they don't necessarily want to say who they are when they're being very honest in the survey about
Mhm.
some of the limitations they have in their own IT asset management program. Um, Overall, our goal is to improve our customers' performance and improve our performance. And I think, again, improve the industry's performance on just being able to educate the community at large on how IT asset disposition services could be of value. And I think if our industry can make our enterprise clients or people who aren't clients of any of ours more familiar with these issues, it can benefit us all.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me say that I've been taking courses at Wharton to understand ESG, and a great deal of what some of these experts have been saying is openness, sharing information, particularly pertaining to things that matter to clients, uh, play a big role in in improving the performance of the industry. Do you see uh, through these surveys and sharing these surveys that your company is benefiting? Are there any sort of benefits? Uh, First of all, of course, knowing is absolutely beneficial, but sharing in particular with competitors, do you see any benefits there?
Well, there's two benefits that we have, internal benefits with our existing customers. So we actually use this as a tool to benchmark our existing customers against others. So we can break it down a little bit further by industry. So how does one of our customers in the insurance industry compare to all of our other clients in the industry? Are their average resale revenues similar? Their rebate or their reuse rates, recovery rates similar? If not, what can they do better to improve? So we use this idea of we want everybody to eventually beat the average. And so that'll force up the average. So that helps our internal customers improve. And when they improve, we financially improve. The more assets that can be reused and resold is a benefit to us financially and environmentally, and it also benefits our clients.
Yeah, yeah.
I think secondly, the benefit of sharing the information to the community at large is it definitely raises our profile. And I appreciate the fact that Cascade is respected as an industry resource that other people will look towards. And we're hopeful we can get new business because of that, because people respect the work that we do to share this information and are seen as a trusted resource.
So the broad sort of picture that emerges, if I were to summarize it, knowing that you've been doing this for 10 years, is that ITAD in general, as an enterprise function, hasn't really changed drastically over the past decade. Uh, there are certainly uh, growing numbers of companies that are conscious about it, that are aware of ITAD. The implementation happens to be a little iffy for a number of reasons. Uh, can you share your thoughts as to whether my 30,000-foot view makes sense?
Yeah, so on the question on how mature the programs have been and how they've improved over the past 10 years, I think it's been a little bit. One of the survey questions that we've asked is how long have you had a formal IT asset management program in place? Knowing that we've actually seen a pretty dramatic shift of the people managing the programs from being the person at the dock to at least somebody in IT. So back in 2015, when we asked that question, we had 21.4% said they have no IT asset management program in place. And at least now that's down to 8.5%. So it's a little
Mhm.
bit lower. And then the ones that are at over 50% has improved by about 10 points. So we have people who've had a program for a little bit longer. it's still the case that there are a lot of, especially the mid-sized companies, that are still keeping some of their asset tracking on a spreadsheet, or might not know what it is. But that has definitely improved a bit over the 10 years. So I'd see some maturity.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I can confirm, the way I look at it from my perspective is really the data that relates to the routes to disposition,
Mhm.
and the ones that are I consider non-compliant. The proportions have been dropping over time. It's still big,
Mhm.
relative to the issues that we're facing, environmental and otherwise. But in general, yes, I do agree with you that despite my assessment that things are generally the same. There have been some improvements in specific areas. I have to say that for people that don't know Cascade, and I do apologize, I haven't introduced Cascade right in the beginning. It's a leading ITAD company. By leading, uh, we're not looking at market share per se because nobody has that kind of number. We're looking at it from the perspective of feedback from end users that are also clients of all the companies that we track, and Cascade tends to be one of the top vendors there. Perhaps Neil, you can sort of share who Cascade is.
Yeah, thank you. So Cascade Asset Management was founded in 1999, so this is our 25th year in business. We have three locations in the United States, just working in the United States for IT asset disposition. So we're headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin, with facilities in Indianapolis and Orlando, Florida. And among those facilities, we've processed about 120 million pounds of equipment over the 25 years. And we're handling about 20 Fortune 1000 clients and many more that are kind of in that mid-tier. So we do work with about 300 to 400 enterprise clients per year with handling their IT asset disposition from a variety of industries.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. A moment ago, Neil, you spoke about program maturity levels, ITAM, ITAD program maturity levels. Can you explain that? I see the graph that you share. I actually have the presentation in front of me right now. And, there's still sort of a minority that talk about their programs as chaotic. You still have a pretty good number that report a reactive programs. And then it gets better. But if you don't mind sharing, I noticed also there's a minority that think of ITAD and ITAM programs, their ITAD programs as being strategic. And I think that's probably where you want most companies to go eventually.
Right. And I think it's a very fair assessment that people are very few are saying that they're strategic. And strategic, this is also well defined in the IT asset management, International Association of IT Asset Managers, Gartner. Others have kind of looked at these maturity models across a lot of industries. But to be able to have the IT asset management system provide input into making key purchasing, use, and retirement strategy decisions, that's really lacking in a lot of clients still.
Of course. Yeah.
It is very much, at least on the proactive, I'm seeing them defined as people at least know where their assets are. So when they're coming up due for renewal or refresh, or the software licenses need to be managed, that at least they know where the assets are. But making strategic decisions of saying, it makes more sense for us to do a 3-year program rather than a 4-year refresh program, or to get these types of devices for these types of users because they have less demands. Not many people are really there yet, from my observation. And so I
Yes,
think
and
there's a lot of opportunity for improvement of the use of assets in enterprises, and we can help from the retirement side.
I did notice on slide 3 of your presentation that 72% of the respondents work in IT related jobs. So in general, IT tends to be sort of the dominant player, and I believe this is a big problem, right? Because at the end of the day, we did define that there's at least 7 functions that have to play a role in ITS at this position. And can you tell us why IT departments tend to be sort of the lead, and why not other functions involved as much as they should be?
Yeah, I mean, and we also did lump some IT asset managers in that too. So they're the asset managers, but they report into the IT function. So that's the ideal. I mean, you kind of have to have someone who's the gatekeeper that can bring all these different stakeholders and interest groups together. And I do see the value of the IT asset manager being the person who knows enough about the IT assets, but they interface with procurement and planning, with sustainability, with compliance, security. And they really should bring those together because if you just had this environmental or the security people, they're only looking at one aspect.
Hmm.
Um, so I do think that it's hard for just the IT service manager or the director of end user computing technology to really have a broad enough viewpoint to know how to look at some of these other important issues in the asset disposition, being its sustainability, ESG, and that the lack of understanding of ESG, I thought was pretty amazing. And that's probably because we're asking a lot of IT people. And so they're not able to actually recognize the benefits of their ITAD program could have on the organization's sustainability efforts.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of power we've seen when people can bring those different groups together. And it doesn't have to be on a day-to-day basis. It's reviewing the policies, make sure that the policies related to IT asset management and disposition reflect current standards. And that's been a real challenge because we still have security policies from major organizations that reference outdated standards, and they haven't been updated. If the policies aren't right, they can't direct the IT asset management program to do the best thing. And so there's kind of some interface there that needs to happen to improve everybody's programs.
So, and how would you sort of advise your peers to tweak their programs to be more proactive in pushing for not changes but improvements?
Yeah, I think what we do is we ask the question, can you show us your security policy as it relates to the destruction of data as you retire your IT assets? Um, please show us the policy because one, we want to make sure that we're compliant to that policy. That's really critical. And then we could also evaluate, is that policy up to date with current standards? And maybe we can provide some information and instruction to how to make that better. So that's the first question we ask. Show us your policies. I do find a lot of people don't know what their policies are, which is, they should get trained on them. I mean, we're asked as ITAD vendors who might be business associates that are working in healthcare environments. We have to do annual trainings for all of our employees to understand our security policy. And it does say if we're dealing with data that needs to be destroyed, how do we destroy it and what standard? And I would hope everybody is getting trained and is aware of it and that the policy is reviewed at regular intervals because we're sure asked to do that. But that's one of the ways that we can help people because sometimes we still see references to the DoD 5220 standard for data wiping. We still have, we see examples where people might say anything that's going to an ITAD provider has to be physically destroyed, completely destroyed because we're very concerned about security. And then if they have a part that fails that needs to go back to their manufacturer, their vendor, they don't care anything about data security. So there might be different standards for how assets leave their environment. And we want to make sure if there's a security standard, if you're allowed to send out encrypted drives to a part repair organization, why can't you do that to the ITAD company? And then we destroy the data. So try and help them create consistent, up-to-date, current policies that are actually followed. Is
Yeah,
something I'll do.
and it's a tough thing for sure. One of the things that we've been capturing consistently in our research is this duality between sort of what is right, what is important to do, and what is probably a must. For example, your survey uh, confirmed again the predominant importance of data security. I think every ITAD survey, every survey that deals with dealing with devices that are data bearing will show that. So, and that's reflected in all of our research, Neil. It's everywhere. I mean, data security is predominant. What we found, though, is when you include financial elements, whether it is sort of cost containment or generating revenue from sell into the secondary market. You know, the discourse and the speech and the narrative is about data security. The practical aspect is about cost containment, revenue generation. Do you see that among your customers, or is it something, or are we moving away from this?
It's definitely improved where people are, when they are claiming that data security is a primary motivator for their decisions, they actually are putting money behind it nowadays. I think that we see this in a few ways in the RFPs that we may be participating in, where I think it used to be the case, you need to jump through all these hoops for security, certifications, compliance programs, and can you do it for free? It's kind of like the thing that was thrown in early on. Now they understand, okay, tell us what it's going to cost to be able to achieve these goals, and let's do it as effectively as possible. I think some people are making good decisions on how to be frugal and cost conscious when they're dealing with security. And that's maybe some trade-offs where people are not inventorying monitors anymore because they don't need to track it and they're not a data security risk. Okay, that makes sense. You're still managing those assets as commodities, getting them recycled properly and responsibly, but you don't need to track them. That's fine, and that'll save you some money. So I think people are looking at ways to do cost containment and improving recovery values without compromising security in a thoughtful fashion.
Yeah. Now, speaking about hardware trends, I know you've done a lot of work on this. What are you seeing taking place there, and above and beyond sort of just your standard PCs, desktops, and laptops? Anything that you can share?
Yeah, we just hit like last year, the year before, where laptops are retired we're getting more laptops retired than desktops. The way that desktops actually stuck around a little bit was the introduction of more thin client computing devices, especially during the pandemic. But I don't think thin clients were a long-term solution for many organizations. A lot of them have told us that they've abandoned that approach, and it may have been just to be able to meet the demand when laptops weren't available. So what's interesting for us is I know that people have been saying for 10 years that the sales of laptops are outpacing desktops, but it takes a while to filter through on the retirement side. So we're now just finally seeing that. So there's still a lot of desktops out there, but when it comes to end user computing devices, that is the predominant amount, types of devices we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Laptops are also, but they're changing. They're becoming hybrid type devices. As surfaces are these tablets that can be used as a touch screen, can be used as these folio type devices. Then they're kind of morphing between a tablet and a laptop and a PC. So sometimes it's hard for us to classify devices when they come through, just to know what are they. Is it a tablet or is it a laptop? And it has an impact on how do we process the device. But yeah, we're seeing, an increase in mobile computing devices that are coming through. I don't think our kind of business is capturing as many as that are out there being retired. A lot of them are going to specific programs that target smartphones and tablets, and they may not be coming through the normal disposal options of our clients. They might go into carriers or specialized processors that handle those devices. But we do see them. And we are still seeing a large number of data center equipment that's coming through. And we don't work with the hyperscale data centers. This is going to be more of your mid-level data centers that they still are out there, but they are decreasing in use as people are putting more of their cloud computing more of their computing power onto the cloud.
Now, do you see a differentiation in terms of the way companies think of ITAD when it comes to mobile phones versus regular general computing? Are we talking about different stakeholders within the enterprise that deal with these, the telecom, let's say the telecom division or department versus the IT department?
Yes, we have seen that. I think it's fluctuated back and forth, but there are many instances where it is a completely different department that's dealing with the telecommunications side, because it's also different kinds of contracts, as well as, on how they're managed through that much more of a subscription. We interface with this because of how to unlock mobile device management tools. It's a different department that's managing it rather than the other end user computing departments. But I have sometimes seen it integrated into the same IT
Mhm.
program, depending on the size and complexity of the
Right, right.
organization. When
Do,
they're
do you?
separated, I have seen a lot of inconsistencies too on how people follow policies, procedures, and um, compliance programs and sustainability goals.
I am under the impression that there is more maturity on the mobile phone, particularly the mobile or the smartphone, by virtue of having sort of the carriers locking that market essentially when in partnership with Apple, particularly with Apple, making it very, very difficult to create a more fluid, a more open sort of disposition sector on the smartphone thing. And because of this sort of lock, it seems that the on the smartphone side, it's much more disciplined, if I may use that term.
Well, I think there's a few things that impact the mobile devices that I've seen. One is there is much more of a forced refresh rate because of contract cycles. So if you know that you're going to be on a 2-year contract with the opportunity to upgrade, people are actually following that and more disciplined for refresh cycles to stay up to date. I have seen an improvement in how companies are managing their mobile device platform because, especially with iOS devices, it used to be that people would do a lot of it could be the bring your own device type of mentality, or somebody would create an Apple ID on their phone, which would be linked to them, and so it's locked when you're retiring it. But I think there's been much more sophistication for using Apple Business Manager, Apple School Manager to manage the devices from an enterprise level. So they actually can be, they're much easier to work with an enterprise to unlock them to allow us to repurpose them for second use, re-image them and refurbish them. So that's
Mhm.
actually improved because I think Apple and others like Jamf have worked with organizations to do a better enterprise managed system for their mobile devices rather than this whole BYOD hybrid program that individuals were locking their devices.
Do you have some thoughts that you can share on number of years devices are in operation? I noticed that in many cases, iPhones might be more expensive and quite often more expensive than a laptop, and yet the iPhone ecosystem managed to convince people to get rid of to
Mhm.
refresh every 2.5, 3.5, no more than 4 years. Your thoughts on that? I mean, is there a logic as to why the smartphones tend to refresh faster than laptops, for example?
Well, one of the things I looked at when we were looking 10 years back when we started this was what was the cost for the typical devices that people were buying that then they were retiring. So in 2015, the iPhone 6 was released, and the introductory price on that was $200. The current
Yes.
iPhone is released at an introductory price of $800.
Right.
So you look at that, laptops and desktops have not gone up fourfold in 10 years. In fact, they've dropped on average, unless you get a specialized device that has come in and kind of, surfaces or kind of some new things and new innovations that might have come in. But yeah, it's so first of all, on price is interesting. And I think that's driving a lot of the resale and refurbishing market on the secondary market. Um, yeah, I mean, there's some of these phones are holding their value. They're smaller, so you can have a lot more value in a box of phones than you have in, a truckload of laptops and desktops that are being retired. And so there is an opportunity there in the iTab market to really try and work through some of these devices. And there's more opportunity in the smartphone and tablet field because of them introducing more features, I think, than laptops and desktops. And so they can get a premium price. And then on the secondary market, they hold some good value. So, one of the other things we looked at too is just asking people what over the years, we asked them to report how old the devices are that they expect to retire in the next year. And the people have been pretty honest about it. I think a lot of people think that they have a 3 to 4 year refresh, but when it comes time to actually getting rid of the device, it add on another year every time because
Yeah.
it takes a while just to organize it and get rid of it. So the numbers that we have as far as how old things are, laptops back in 2015, people said on average they were 4.2 years old. So, 4 years and 3 months old. and now it's 4 years and 6 months old to get rid of them. So it's a little bit longer, but not much longer. And I think people are holding on to them because there's nothing really forcing them to replace it. And that's impacted negatively the resale price of some of these devices because people are holding on to them a little bit longer because desktops and laptops are getting forced out for obsolescence. And that's not a
Yeah.
bad.
In terms of the data security part, I know you've reported a very interesting chart on data sanitization, where you do show a huge proportion of your customers still using internal standards. Our data suggests, we capture data on, who are sort of the data security software vendors out there in the ITAD space. And obviously the predominant one tends to be Blanco in general, tends to be cited as Blanco, even though Blanco, has a predominant play in the ITAD space and has been trying or working to get more into the enterprise space. We still see 33%, a third, using open source software. And in your case, internal standards, what is it's almost 60%. What's the definition of internal standards?
Yeah, and that's just having some kind of a way that they're either, it could be examples that I've seen are we're going to remove and destroy the drive on, physically pull the drive and destroy it. I've seen some people say that, or they'll say that we're going to work with a certified processor, but not necessarily say that they're going to wipe to a certain standard. So they may not specify very specifically that when any data leaves their environment, it's sanitized to a clear or purge level for NIST 800-88. I mean, that's what we're looking for. I think that's the maturity of a program. Sometimes people just say, we're not going to let any data leave our environment and just leave it at that. So we're trying to work with people to be a little bit more specific in their standards. So it's great that they have an internal standard, but that what they should do is reference a well-respected industry standard that keeps up with technology so that it can adapt to the different devices they're retiring over time. So in the survey, we asked people to select more than one. So ideally, people would say, I have an internal standard and I follow the NIST 800-88 requirements. But it's amazing that less than 20% are following and actually specifying that they need to use either themselves or have a third-party provider sanitize their data to NIST 800-88 or a similar standard.
Following up on this context, if you will, what's the appetite among sort of large enterprises or enterprises in general, doesn't have to be large, medium size as well, for opportunity of free marketing? Is there appetite there? Do they
Yeah, it's improved over time too. I think that people have gotten have seen some faith in or created some trust in the system, being able to see how it works as far as electronic sanitization. I've seen some companies that may have different risk profiles for different types of devices from where they're generated, and have different standards on how the medium might be sanitized. So some will be fine with a clear purge, and some say, no, you have to physically remove and destroy if it's coming from a data center or coming from a high level executive. So we've seen people do a hybrid approach. But when talking with the security managers, just being able to have them understand how the electronic sanitization works, how the audit control works, because you can actually have an independently certified audit through a software program log that a specific serial number hard drive was wiped to a certain standard, and if it was effective or not on a certain date, that provides a good assurance to them.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
again, any of the issues where people have found of data breaches of devices that have gone through ITAD companies like the Morgan Stanley data breach, those are all those all came when someone did not actually do a sanitization. So you don't have any examples of someone who's sanitized a drive and then been able to recover information from it when it's passed through an ITAD company.
Yeah.
So the goal is to make sure an ITAD company is actually following through on the sanitization, providing the documentation to do it, and then that should satisfy your risk for media sanitization.
Let me pivot to the certification world. I'm looking at a table on slide 11 and a corresponding chart, and I am absolutely not surprised that in some cases the majority doesn't seem to know what a certification is. We see that number a little higher on our side of the research, and I think this is happening because you probably are doing a lot more outreach to your clients to improve those numbers, to lower those numbers. And so uh, perhaps your sample of clients may be not as representative as what we see in the broad market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would hope. I mean, the people who are surveyed and reporting the information in a benchmarking report are our customers. And Cascade is an eSteward certified company. And on every certificate of destruction, every document that we provide to them for a job confirmation, we put it on our business cards, it's on our truck. We have a label that we're eSteward certified. That being said, half of our customers are not even knowing what that certification means, which is
Yeah.
just it's depressing sometimes. You put the information out, we're trying to educate people. I mean, it's a complicated standard. These are complicated. This is not the something that our customers are going to be experts in, but I hope that they're aware of what it does to help them comply with their own sustainability or data security requirements. So this is just a reminder to us and our entire industry that we have to continually educate people about what these standards are and how they provide value to our clients and their organizations. Um, and especially, I think, as ESG comes up on the governance side, this can be something that can really be a value to our clients to let them know that this standard, this third-party audited program, provides a good level of assurance that should keep them out of trouble and helps them be compliant with their own data security and disposition requirements.
It's fair to say that certifications take probably decades to roll
Mhm.
out. To roll out, you first have to create them, then you have to create a consensus, then you have to create a processes, then it takes years to sort of roll out within the industry itself before the customer is even aware of them. And I would argue it's probably happening everywhere in every industry, right? The question is, are the certification bodies able to actually launch a an outreach program to go after the at least the very large companies, the Fortune 500, etc.
Yeah, and I think that they're trying to do it. eStewards has the enterprise program. R2 and Siri have a lot of good programs to get information out. What I see is that maybe these organizations in our industry is providing more specific benefits to clients. So there is work underway in both organizations on ESG and calculator tools. So if we can provide through our industry associations and the certifications an assurance that the work that we are doing translates into true environmental benefits that potentially could be used in compliance programs for trading carbon credits, people might be more interested. And that could be, it's essentially the certification programs are providing more value to the enterprise. The enterprise will get value because they know that they can work through a certification program to help meet their corporate ESG goals or their need to reduce carbon, to get to carbon neutral. And if there's a stated goal and the CIO and the chief sustainability officer, whoever else has to meet it, these standards provide an easy way to help them meet those programs. And I hope that that's one of the ways that we can demonstrate through these standard organizations and through our industry to provide more value to enterprises. And then they know what our certifications mean and how it's useful for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of the data that you have here on the ESG front, and it's somewhat alarming. Where for example, where the level of importance that the company places on ESG initiatives, and you have 35% that outright saying it's not important. You still have 35% that are saying it's important. Uh, you look at the second pie chart, and it says, does your company plan to produce or produces an ESG document? And you get a majority of 53%. Does that mimic sort of what's going on in terms of their understanding of ITAD? I mean, is ESG equated with ITAD in that world? And is this a picture of what's happening there?
It's new and emerging. And also I think it's representative a bit of the demographics of the people who participated in our survey. There's a good amount of people that are in that even like a 500 to 5,000 device category. So they may not have the sophistication or even a sustainability department that's working on stuff like this. So there could be, if you break this down by the people who are the large organizations, there is much more of an interest and a recognition of ESG because that is a company priority that they have. But how this is going to filter down to other companies that are just, their focus is to keep operating, especially in some of these challenging economic times. Sustainability reports might be one of the nice to have investments as opposed to it's critical for, and it's a requirement for their investors or a requirement for their reporting. It's not there yet. And so people are doing it if they feel like they can promote it, but it's not a requirement for most companies right now.
Yeah, and perhaps a related question, in your opinion, is the ITAD industry itself ready for that? Because at the end of the day, it's one thing to ask a large enterprise to be more ESG friendly and ready, etc. On the other hand, there are so many small ITAD companies out there that account for a good chunk of the ITAD business. Are they themselves ready to look at their sort of infrastructure, their own operations, etc., and say, okay, we do have an ESG program and it's mapped out very nicely. It's tied to our, there's a pathway to our P&L systems, etc.
It's our industry is very fragmented, lots of small companies that might not have the sophistication to do this. And so that's where industry organizations can really help us, I think, providing some templates and tools that can help the small companies. And again, as we're learning the terminology and how it applies of scope 1, scope 2 emissions, I think from a scope 1 emission of the products that we are controlling and we pick up to refurbish and reuse and then recycle, people have a pretty good grasp on that because that's kind of the key part to their business. All these scope 2 things, as far as like, well, how much energy does it take for us to test all these computers and run the business? What about the transportation for picking up and processing? I think that's just a new thing that it's important for people to grasp those impacts that we have. And Cascade's doing a lot of focus on that with buying renewable energy for running all of our plants for electricity, because we consume quite a bit of electricity to test the products and do the processing. And so that's important for us to not have a negative impact on the environment through our processing activities. But transportation, we don't have electric vehicles yet. We don't have the way to reduce some of that. So the little things we can do to put as much as we can on a truck and maximize the capacity to help reduce the environmental impact of the average asset that we handle is what we're trying to do right now. And I think ITAD can really try and benefit, or can really try and mature and grow and reduce our environmental impacts of handling clients' assets, not only by optimizing scope 1 emissions, but our scope 2 impacts too.
And of course, you have to have an interlocutor on the other side,
right,
that sort of helps you understand and helps you sort of implement that within their infrastructure. My sense is that looking at the people that I deal with on the end user side, there's been a lot of sort of turnover. People come and go. It's very difficult to stabilize even the labor pool that's involved in procurement and in IT departments. We've seen a lot of layoffs lately in technology world and tech world. Is there like a magic formula to sort of create templates of what an ITAD program ought to be, so whomever comes in easily can learn about that? Or is it still a difficult thing to do?
I think there's some good templates out there. I mean, we're a writer member of the International Association of IT Asset Managers. They've got courses that people can take that can help provide, if people haven't done IT asset management before, look at the entire life cycle of products, understand stakeholders, how to communicate with them, how to set up a program. We always like to promote vendors that are doing good work. I mean, there's a lot of maturity in In the service providers that are doing the entire lifecycle management, whether it's ServiceNow or other even startup companies. I just heard about a new one that's cloud provider of asset management tools to help people identify what they have and how they're disposing of items. And then I think people should hopefully rely on their ITAD provider for some expertise. If someone's new into their role in an enterprise, and they need to navigate the issues with security, environmental compliance, maximizing value of the assets. We're here to help. All of us in the ITAD industry want our customers to make better decisions on how they handle their equipment, both in use and in getting ready for disposal, because it saves us all some money. The nice thing about our business is we can align financial benefits with environmental benefits because we can reuse more things. It's good for the environment, as long as you're not working with a processor that's dumping things overseas without wiping them. So if you make sure that they're a responsible processor, then we all want to maximize the financial, environmental, and security benefits for our clients.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, this is something that you guys do. I mean, being able to sort of track assets, track costs, track revenue opportunities, track environmental impact. To me, it should be a no-brainer in terms of incorporating these, factors into a future ESG program or ESG reporting program. So, when you look at the challenges for 2024, what are your customers telling you in terms of what they see this year unfold in general? I'm assuming a lot of it is repetitive, the same data security in particular. Anything else that is interesting this year?
Well, I think some people are looking to catch up on deferred purchases from the last 18 months. So we're seeing some interest and, recognition that the economy, at least from an inflationary perspective, isn't going to get worse in the near term. So there is an opportunity with some interest rates stabilizing, maybe coming down a little bit, that they can make some investments and do some growth and purchase new IT equipment and therefore retire the old stuff. People are starting to talk about the Windows 10 and ending their support in 2025. So people are starting to gear up and realizing they need to get anything that's not going to be upgraded and meet the new Windows 11 requirement, that they have to get ready for that. So that's driving some decisions. And again, it's interesting looking historically at our benchmarking report. Windows 10 was introduced almost 10 years ago in 2015. So that's been around for a long time, where the operating system used to be upgraded much more quickly and then also impact refreshes as well. I think there is general concern too about maybe politically in the US what's going to happen. I haven't heard that come down for people making their decisions on if they're not going to make investments in the economy, but I think we'll see how that plays out over the summer. But that's one of the concerns we have on just the economic fallout of what could be a very messy election one way or the other. So I think, and then just other international geopolitical issues, shipping lanes being disrupted, war, costs for fuel all have an impact on costs, all have an impact on the global economy, demand for products. So general uncertainty means people are somewhat going to be conservative in their purchasing decisions, but the concern about the economic future is also being balanced out by the need to upgrade because of Windows 10 and also deferred purchases. So we'll see where that plays out.
Yeah, interestingly, I think I heard that Microsoft is introducing Windows 12 sometime this year. The discussion we had with Bob O'Donnell in our sort of forecast of what's to come in 2024, he did suggest and confirm that there have been so many PC shipments in the COVID and post-COVID and immediate post-COVID era that the thing is saturated. The market is saturated, and it's been the PC sector has been struggling for over 8 consecutive quarters of year-on-year decrease. That everyone says we sort of reached the bottom. Question is, you know, how quickly things are going to move. Hopefully, mid-year things will move for sure. Specific to Cascade operationally, how is the market evolving? We're February, it's too early to make a call about 2024, but let's say compared to the year ago period.
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better starting 2024 than we were at 2023, which was kind of, I think January of 2023, we were kind of at the bottom as far as average revenue for resold equipment, impacts of cost that we hadn't been able to address through cost-cutting measures or price, changes. And then we kind of were just implementing them at Q4 of 2022. So it was very hard a year ago. Happy to report so much better right now, both from a revenue and a profitability side, and getting more money back to our customers on rebates from revenue share. So compared January and like December, January, the last 2 months, both on the revenue and the revenue share back to our customers is up like 20-30%. So that's really good to see, good profitability going forward. And so that's what we're hoping to be. I mean, we saw an average drop of like over year to year, 2022 to 2023, revenue, average rebate revenue or resale revenue for resold equipment was down 40%. And if we look at the Q4 2023 numbers versus Q4 2022 numbers versus the previous year, yeah, they were down 50%. So now we've stabilized, we've seen them creeping back up on the average prices, so that's great to see. And that helps, again, our customers and our bottom line.
And that stabilization, Neil, is it a function of a rubber band effect or because I'm still not unclear about sort of the refresh cycle, demand for components, etc. But is it a sort of a return to a normal threshold, or there are other things that are helping?
Yeah, I think it's returned to normal. So if we use a rubber band analogy, we definitely stretched it out to get as big as a growth that we could in 2021 and early 22. It was beyond what a normalization should be as far as values and costs being down for ITAD and values being way up. It has shrunk, but it's now down to like a normal size of a rubber band that it was before the pandemic. So I think costs are still up, but I think people have increased prices like we have on certain activities, not all activities, but certain activities that made sense and that the market was fine with, like everybody else did. And so we kind of normalized there. And so now we're kind of tracking steady there. And then the resale values have come back up to help us too.
We saw 8 M&A and expansion transactions taking place in January. Generally, they're not really big value transactions. They're pretty small. A couple of them were expansions, companies buying more sites to either go after new geographies or basically consolidate other sites. Any expansion goals for Cascade this year?
We're really looking to grow our existing footprint. So we expanded into the Orlando, Florida market a couple of years ago. And so we're actually looking to build, expand our capacity there. We're doing some leasehold improvements to increase our refurbishing capacity, essentially doubling it, but we can do it within our same space. So there's a lot of available capacity we could use in our existing infrastructure to add more people, to move more product. And so that's our goal right now. We have goals of growing 20% organically this year. And we see the opportunity is there. We've got the customers. We have an interest in new customers, and we're seeing more value from the resale sold assets. So Cascade has been a family-run business for 25 years. We've been able to manage that through, service the biggest customers that are out there in the U.S. and yet do it with a family-friendly style and always be there and loyal for folks. And that's what's made us successful, and that's what we're doing right now.
Thank you very much, Neil. I really appreciate the discussion, and I look forward to more of those going forward.
Thank you, David. Great to talk to you.